Just before we start, we just bow our heads again. Father, we just want to thank you again for this, your Shabbat. Father, we thank you that we can gather, Father, as family, and we just open up your word. Father, I just want to thank you for what you've written. Father, thank you that it's a guide, that it's a foreshadow, that you teach us through it, Father. And I just pray that as we do, that we would not only understand you, Father, but Father, that we would better understand Yeshua. We thank you for your blessings, Father. We thank you for this time, and we give you glory. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. All right, opening up to Bereshit, Genesis chapter 22. Genesis 22. Let's go. Perfect. All right, so last week we spoke about. There's a little lot before that. Yeah. Yes, we got into the Abimelech covenant, and we got that Sheba. Again, Abraham making the same mistakes, right? And we also spoke about the link between parable of the sower and what seems to be the ages of the patriarchs, right? So at 100, at 60, and 30. Okay. From there, we go into something you guys have probably would have gone through and studied at length. As soon as you come into this walk and we look at prophetic foreshadows and things like this is one of those chapters that just scream Yeshua. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this, but I want you to try and just think of, okay, what I'm reading now, going into the binding of Isaac, how does that parallel? Where is that first stage? Just like with Passover, we're going to see interesting things. Yeah.
Yes, again, with Sarah, having a
Yeah.
very easy one. It says here, now everyone hears about the law with me. And every time I reach there, I'm
Yeah. Well, 90-year-old.
Yes,
We're laughing, but you're crying inside. No. Okay. Genesis 22. It says, after these things, God tested Abraham. All right. Now, why after these things did God test Abraham? Okay, but before we even get to that point, I want you to think of a preparation from Father. Father meets you at a certain place, right? I want you to go back and I want you to think just for a moment, make it about you. God pictures up in your life at that specific point, and He slowly starts to go, this is me, now I want you to do this. This is me, now I want you to do this. This is me, now I want you to do this. And I want you to think of your journey at the Lord. Right? So you should not be the same place you were when Father met you. Right? So again, you have these moments when we get intro to the Moses story. Where do we find him? Yeah, we find him in Egypt, we find him as a baby, and then eventually, we see him grow up as a prince. Did he stay a prince the entire time? No, he goes, all right, well, okay, we've got lessons to learn. So now you have to become a shepherd. Right, so you're going to spend a really long time understanding what it means to be a shepherd. Did he stay a shepherd? Samuel's the way he became a leader of the people. Right? So his education as a prince of Egypt, his education as a shepherd, God used to build him up to get to the place of, well, everybody's looking to you now, Right? Just as someone who would be a leader, just as someone who would be a shepherd, He used those moments in Moses' life to get him to the bigger moment. So when God is preparing you, you go through these little stages and these little moments. Abraham at the beginning, the first test was, what did he say in the beginning of the Abraham story? He said, leave your kingdom, leave your place. Go. And he sets up. Are you going to trust me with this? Right? And as he takes that step out, and we saw it seemed to be partial obedience because he takes some of his family with him and he kind of gets stuck halfway to the promised land. So he's like, yes, 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 we're going. And then it's like, okay, but I'm still not there. And so he slowly starts to build Abraham up. Do not fear Abraham. Abraham, I'm going to give you a promised seed, Abraham. Abraham, this is what I'm going to do for you, Abraham. And that those little moments of faith building things all up to a pinnacle point. There's going to be moments when you think of Elijah, what was his pinnacle point? Pinnacle point of faith, Elijah. Yeah, that's probably lower. No. I think we could go to the point. Okay, let me say this. If people understand Elijah, what do they normally remember about him? Standing on top of a mountain, fire coming down, right? And this is this moment where he slowly but surely goes. That was 3.5 years in the making. John, so many different examples of this, like David and so on, when we get into the place of, right? So I want you to think that after these things, as God has been slowly building him up to get him to this point, right? It says, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he answered, here I am. In Hebrew? Hineni. What does that mean? I am. Here I am to serve. Right? So the implication is, it's not just, hey, I'm here. All right? He said, take your son, your only son, whom you love. Now, whom you love? Where have you heard that before with Messiah? Father. Right? When did he say? The baptism. Right. This is my son, whom I love. All right? So we should be hearing echoes here. And he goes, Yitzhak, and go to the land of Moriah, where you are to offer him as a burnt offering on a mountain that I will point out to you. Go to a place which I will show you. And he says, but this son that I've given you, I want you to offer him. And now you've got to stop and you've got to go, how clear am I understanding the voice of God? All the relationship testing moments up until this point, when you get there and when God speaks, we're not talking about the beginning of Abraham's walk going, Lord, is that you? That's, for instance, paraphrase version. Or Samuel, you know, like Samuel, where he hears his name, Shmuel, Shmuel, and he goes in and he's like, I hear a voice. Let me go ask him that. This is a moment when he understands quite clearly this is Father, and this is exactly what he's asking for. Now, as a believer, when you get to that point when he says, all right, are you willing to give up everything? How quickly do we as believers say, yes, Lord, we surrender, we submit. And then he says, that needs to go. Lord, I don't know. That might be too much for me. That might be too difficult for me. I don't think we fully comprehend the type of faith and the type of surrender that these guys have. And we're going to read about it, funny enough, in the book of Hebrews. So he goes, says, offer him as a burnt offering on the mountain that I point out to you. Look at his response. Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey. There's no hesitation. He took two of his young men, pay attention, two young men, together with Yitzhak his son. He cut the wood for the burnt offering, departed, and went toward the place God had told him about. On the third day, 3 days' journey from Beersheba to Mount Moriah, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place in the distance. Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go there. Worship and return to you.
Why?
Okay, well, let's think about it from a practical point of view. All right, when we say youth or young men, your translations might say servants. Okay, the word there is na'al. It could mean not like youngish guys, but servants in the house that are of a youngish age that are supposed to learn and copy everything they do from the patriarch, right? So now Abraham, well advanced in years, takes his son, plus minus how old is this? How old is Isaac at this point? I think he's probably in his 30s around this. Okay, so he's not this little boy, but we take him with, and now all of a sudden, Abraham seems to have convinced Isaac to put him down on an ox when he was about to pull out a knife. What would you do as a servant? Yeah, tackle the guy with a knife. Right? So they probably wouldn't understand what's going on here. Much like when we read the story, if we didn't have the prophetic foreshadow, we would also be going, is this the God after?
And that is 50 years old. I
Right.
mean, it's going to get very
That's up again, part of the foreshadow. Right? So I like where your head's at. Just keep that in the back of your mind. We'll deal with it. It's from the time that he was born, after the time he was weaned, after he gets sent away. And if you start to add up the years in the timeline as well as what comes next in the story, you realize that he's not a little boy, but he's a man. Right? If you backtrack, and it'll probably become a little bit more calculated. At what age did he get married? You remember? Isaac gets married at the age of 40. All right. So at the age of 40, we realize that he takes Rebecca to be his wife, and they start to do calculations and backtrack from other little bits of information that they get. Yeah. So from Sarah's death, backtracking and so on, and then they get to a more or less capture. All right. Most scholars agree this guy is not the 9-year-old boy that we just laid out on the altar. Okay.
Okay, so here I don't actually need to
Yeah. Oh well, yeah.
offering is very
Yes. We're talking about human sacrifice.
Shouldn't Abraham's response be the sort of murder?
Well, I don't think I heard you right. Breaking up God. You know, there could be a plethora of different responses, I would think. But he is so clear about who's speaking, what's required, and he's like, that's what you want. All right? In Hebrews, it helps us understand his logic a little bit more.
But it was also in the culture that we talked about. It was a very normal thing for them to sacrifice children to the gods.
It is, but I think now you're talking, he's been so detached from that reality. And now you're getting to the place of, that's not even in his frame of thinking. But yeah, other cultures definitely was child sacrifices. Well, this is what we do for crops, or we do for war, or we do for whatever. Right? So this is a very detached story. This is what sets it up and makes it so interesting. All right, where are we? He raised his eyes to place of distance, left the young man. He says, I will return to verse 6. Abram took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on Yitzhak, his son. So he's old enough to carry the wood on his back. You start to see it, right? Then he took his hand with the fire and the knife, and they both went on together. Yitzhak spoke to Avram, his father. He says, my father. He answered, here I am, my son. He said, I see the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Avram replied, God will provide himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And they both went on together. They came to the place God had told him about, and Abraham built the altar there, set the wood in order, bound Yitzhak his son, and laid him on the altar on the wood. Now you've got to stop and you've got to think. If our math is correct, and we have a wrestling contest between a 130-year-old man and a 30-year-old man. Ultimately, if Isaac wanted to, he could have pushed, he could have ran, and that was it, he's done. So when we get to the point of what was going through his mind, I want you to think the complete surrender of a son who trusts his father explicitly. Says, this is it, and I says, I need Isaac, hold out your hands. What are you talking? You're the offer. This is what God wants. And Isaac, we know very little about this guy. It's interesting in the patriarchs. It's like up until this point, he's just kind of seen probably the faith of the father, and he's going, well, if you heard from God, then this is it. And he allows himself to be bound. He lays his own life down. And he gets to this point and he goes, okay. Now here's the thing. What do you think should be going on in the back of their mind? What are you holding on to? What promise are you holding on to at this point?
Start receiving and be like, see,
God has already promised that out of Isaac, through his lineage, this guy's not even married. So what does God have to do to make this situation, redeem this situation, to make sure that those promises still stay true? He said in no uncertain terms, through Isaac, kings will come. He will be the father of many nations, and so on. These promises that he's holding on to into the covenant, I want you to see is what is sitting in his heart. I want you quickly to go to, where do I write it down? At Hebrews, verse 19. Hebrews 11, verse 19. Thank you. Yes, go to Hebrews, verse 19. No one can find it. Hebrews 11. Yeah, we can read from verse 17. So Hebrews 11, it's like the Hall of Fame of faith, right? Goes by faith or by trusting this person did this, by faith, this person did this. Excuse me, by faith and so on. He goes up in verse 17, it says, by trusting Abraham, when he was put to the test, offered up Yitzhak as a sacrifice. Yes, he offered up his only son, who had received the promises, to whom it had been said, what is called your seed will be called Yitzhak. For he had concluded that God could even raise people from the dead. Now you've got to stop and you've got to think. Has Abraham seen a resurrection before? Has people running around been raising people from the dead? You know, we're not dealing with Elijah and Yeshua's time, where it's a miracle that God did, and we go, wow, he can do it again. Abraham's going, even if I kill him, to fulfill the promise, God would have to resurrect him. This is why when he said to his young servants, he said, we'll come back now. We'll both return.
yeah.
You're not going to understand what's going to happen, stay here. But God is going to do something bigger than even he understands.
And Abraham believed Yahweh, and he found Jesus believed. Going against his rational mind, because the culture went against what the other one didn't believe. He got this. Everything is showing us madness.
Thing is, guys, we have to get to the place where we need to hang on the promises of God. Right? There's personal ones and then there's bigger picture ones. Okay? So when he's busy with his story and you're looking out to see what's going on out there, and lots of people panic about what the enemy is doing. Look, even in Babylon, even Medo-Persia, Cyrus was prophesied by name something like 400 years before he was born. He was the king of Medo-Persia. You think he grew up in a Bible-believing house? And God used him, the entire situation, to be able to go, oh, yeah, no, Cyrus is going to come. Then he's going to do this. Then he's going to do that. Then he's going to do that. All of those things are going to come across to the point where God's got this whole plan laid out. It doesn't matter what the enemy is. Everything that he has planned for you, your job is to have the faith to step into that. And when he does it, this is the key thing. If he's called you to do something, or if he's called you for something, understand it's God doing it through you. No, this isn't Moses, you're going to set your people free. Oh, I don't like Egyptians. That's what gets you into trouble, when you do it in your own strength. But when you go, Father, I'm just being present so that you can do what you said you were going to do through me, then it becomes miraculous. Abraham, you're going to have a kid. Oh, am I? At 99, I think this time next year, don't worry. You're going to have a boy. And he stepped in. Do you understand that Father had to do it? It became miraculous. So when we get to this point, when Abraham hinges on those promises, and he goes, God is not a liar. He's promised me this, this, and this, and this. And those things have always come to pass, and they're going to come to pass. Remember the faith builder. This is your territory. What does he plant? It's not. The tamarisk tree. It's a different body. Right? He plants the tamarisk going that my kids and my kids' kids and my kids' kids' kids, they're going to need a tree to play under when it's really hot. This is for them. His faith was already established in that reality. Abraham believes in something he has never seen. A resurrection? Okay. I don't know how you're going to do it, but you promised me, so this is it. Isaac, God's promise. Now, this is the type of faith that Isaac is going to need, and Jacob's going to need, and Joseph's going to need. You not understand that as Father in this, that when you start now believing in something you've never seen, is that so far from our realm? How many of you were present at the crucifixion? How many of you were present at his resurrection? How many of you were present at the pouring out of the Holy Spirit? And yet you believe, but you've never seen. But it says exactly the point. Because of the promise, I can hold on to that point, and I can base my eternity on that reality. If I can trust him with my eternity, I can trust with Isaac's resurrection, because he still needs to have kids. You understand how much bigger it is? We do it all the time without thinking, but as soon as you allow logic to come into the picture, then we go, I don't understand how he's going to do it. Don't allow your logic to overrule your faith. Because Father has to do it so that he can have the glory. You with me? Yeah.
But if you don't have the love of the sea, you don't follow the leaders.
Yeah.
You know, the exact purpose of love. It's not scary.
What's the mission? You have to choose to trust. Right? Last little bit of testing before we start to break this up. You know, we talked about childlike faith, right? If you think back to your childhood, perhaps just for a second, and then you think, okay, when you ran up to Daddy and you said, Daddy, I want the sweetie, but you knew Daddy was going to the shops. Did you care how much money was in Daddy's bank account? Did you care if Daddy had time to stop for a sweetie? Did you care if there was petrol in the car? So you're probably excited about something, but now Daddy's going to get me a sweetie. If you go through this whole process, you have no idea what it was going to take for your father to get into the car, to drive over there, trusting that he would be kept safe in the car, making sure the car would survive the trip to the shops. All the mechanics, petrol, everything would last miraculously. The manufacturers of the sweeties would make sure that they were in the shop on time, just so that you can get them. All the mechanics that had to happen, all of your faith to understand that something that you imagined for a moment. That he's getting me a Kit Kat. You don't know if the shop has any of them. When it comes back, it's there. It's amazing.
You just say, oh, break it down. So then you come back, yeah.
The logical mind coming in to think about all the little steps that it takes to get that Kit Kat back here so I can enjoy it. How much more so that when I look to God and I look at eternity and I look at all those little logical steps of how He's actually going to get us home. I have no idea all those processes that's going to take place. All I know is by the time it's all said and done, when Daddy comes home, there's going to be a sweet taste in my mouth, and I know where I'm going.
Should the father said something, is it something that I don't respect?
It's exactly the point I'm alluding to. Childlike faith. Right? It's not focusing just on what we can understand. It's trusting the Father to the point where it's beyond understanding. Don't get stuck. Nice car. We were made for bigger things. All right. Okay. Where did I stop in Genesis 22? Let's go to verse. It says that. Yeah, well, I'll read it here. They came to the place God has told him about, and Abraham built an altar there, set the wood in order, bound Yitzhak his son, and laid him on the altar on the wood. Then Abraham put out his hand, and took the knife to kill his son. But the angel of Adonai called to him out of heaven, Abraham, Abraham. He answered, Hineni, here I am. He said, don't lay your hand on the boy. Don't do anything to him, for now I know that you are a man who fears God, because you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. The most precious thing to you, you did not hold back. The kingdom of heaven is like someone who finds a book. He goes and he sells everything he has, just so that he could have that one thing. Everything you work, everything you own, what would you give up to have that truth? Even the most precious thing forever. Avram raised his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram caught in the bushes by his horns. Okay, some translations will say thicket, yes? Something spiky. Avram went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering in its place of his son. Avram called the place Adonai Yireh. Sure, God provides. As it is said to this day, on the mountain Adonai is seen. Yes, sir.
Just some of the translation says, not on the mount, on this.
That is specific, and we'll get into that in a bit. Yes. Yes.
Isn't it even that Yahweh will see to this? I'm just giving such a lot of respect. So early in the day, I was seeing it for years. And earlier on, Yahweh remembers. There's a great. It's not just like Yahweh will provide. It's that people see to it. Why people especially?
I think it's probably because of this idea of God will provide seems to be very much like it's something that you usually not. And then you become desensitized to the reality. If we were to say that about a husband, he'll provide, he'll see to it.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it comes from a more sort of a closer understanding than some. Oh, that, yeah, you'll be with it. You'll make it there. Yeah, but that's yeah.
Like, people,
Oh, this is why context is key. When he's talking about that verse and you're quoting that verse, look at what he's talking.
yeah.
He has already provided what he's saying.
But also the next one is in the second day in the mouth of Yahweh showed a sea.
Yeah.
So, and he will see to his mouth.
Oh,
And that's exactly what,
I think- well, I think the point that he's going to get to there is short, but
Yeah.
says in verse 15, the angel of Adonai called to Abram a second time out of heaven, and he said, I have sworn by myself, says Adonai, that because you have done this, because you have withheld your son, your only son, I will certainly bless you, and I will most certainly increase your descendants to as many as there are stars in the sky or grains in the sand of the seashore. Your descendants will possess the cities of their enemies, and your descendants and by your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed because you have obeyed my order. Again, he's reiterating covenantal promises, right? The very thing that Abraham was holding on to. So Abram returned to his young men and got up and went together to Beersheba, and Abram settled in Beersheba. Notice here that Abram returns. Now, we can have a double play here. It doesn't say Avram and Yitzhak come down the mountain. Okay? But it could be alluded to when he says Avram returned to his young men. Now that we could say, strictly speaking, he's talking about his servants. But the word Na'ar also comes from the root word which means son. So perhaps at the time when he has finished sacrificing the ram, he comes with Yitzhak to the point of, okay, guys, follow my logic for a second. The word Na'ar basically comes down to the point of, I have to learn like a son everything from the person who's above me. So if I were to apply that to Isaac, this is the type of faith that you're going to need to do this. If it was just returning to the servants and Isaac needed a moment away from everybody, which is quite understandable, I think, that when he gets to this point and he goes, all right, I'm going to go down to the servants, you come back, but it says there that then they went to Beersheba. Remember, that's a 3 days journey. I don't think Isaac would have done that just all by himself. But that's just me. Maybe it's a 3-day journey he needed to take by himself. Much like a parallel that comes later. Okay, so let's unpack the paradox. Are you guys okay?
Exciting.
Right. So go back to the top of 22. He says, take your son, your only son. And here we're looking at, okay, we see Yeshua. Settled up his donkey, went up early in the morning. There was a donkey involved. All right, we call that the triumphal entry. He was riding on a donkey. Yes, right. It was a symbol of kingship, actually. King Saul rode on a donkey. So it was, remember, the Torah strictly forbids that they go down to Egypt and they do not buy horses from people. You know? Yeah, he bought many horses from Egypt. Solomon. Right? So when you go to a place like Megiddo, one of the most fortified cities in the time of Solomon, this is where we get to play Armageddon. Har Megiddo. Har is mountain, Megiddo is a city. So when you say the Battle of Har Megiddo, is literally talking about a place in the Jezreel Battle. Right? You go there and you climb up, and then when you get to the layers sort of Solomon, you see stables upon stables upon stables inside the city. You got to stop eating. People are supposed to be inside the city. Stables are supposed to be outside the field, not with Solomon. So when you come in with a donkey, it was actually the point of, listen, here comes the king. The same way the palm branch was like waving a national flag. Okay. All right. Saddled up the donkey, took 2 men. 2 men. So we got 2 men. Do we see 2 men here?
Next to the shore.
Right. We see 2 criminals on his left and his right. Yes, ma'am. All right. We're just picking apart the story and then seeing if we see anything about the crucifixion. Yeah. We're getting to that mountain, yeah. After 3 days journey, they get to Moriah. Where's Mount Moriah? Not quite. First, it's Mount Moriah. Okay, don't listen to Vince. 2 Chronicles 3 verse 1. Tell me what it says. All right. Is everybody there? He built the house of the Lord on Mount Moriah.
Yeah.
Okay, so where was that? In Old City on Temple Mount platform, right? Now here's an interesting fun fact. We're gonna delve a little bit into some archaeology now. Okay, so we know this means what we call Temple Mount area. Now, understand when we get to the hills of Jerusalem, how many hills do we have? What hill peaks do we have in Jerusalem? 7 hills. So when I'm talking about Mount Zion, Mount Moriah, Mount of Olives, they're all in the same territory. Okay? So sometimes it's just a specific point, or sometimes it's Mount Moriah. Okay? Why this becomes so interesting is, remember what I told you when here we had the mountaintop, and now all of a sudden Solomon built his temple. You can only build according to how much flat space you have, right? So you want to level out as much as you possibly can, get your blocks all in a row. So his temple, although extremely extravagant, was a certain size. That gets destroyed, gets rebuilt by Zerubbabel and Yeshua. Something less extravagant, but functional. Herod the Great comes in, and he does what? Doesn't destroy the temple just yet. Remember, Herod the Great is trying to curry favor with Jews. He's trying to keep Rome happy. He's trying to keep the Jews happy. Right? Part of his political play was, I will marry a Hasmonean princess by the name of Mariamna, and I'm gonna make your special places really special. So he built ornate buildings around the cave of Machpelah in Hebron, and he also goes, I'm gonna rebuild the temple. But of course it's Herod, so how can you trust Herod when you say he's gonna do that? So they come to an agreement that if he had to get something like 60% of the building quarried and out at the bottom of the mount, once we have 60%, then you can start to take down from the temple. Okay? But Herod doesn't want to just build something mediocre. He wants to build something that will rival everything in Rome. Right? So Herod does something interesting. He starts to chip away in the mountain so that he can build a platform That's 12,000 by 12,000, 144,000 squares. Okay, that western wall that people go to, right? That's the retaining wall so that we could get a big enough platform at the top. He literally cut away parts of the mountain to be able to do that. Now, today, when you see that platform, over here we see something else. What's that? The Dome of the Rock. Why do they call it the Dome of the Rock? Yeah, because there's a rock inside.
That's amazing.
No, it's literally it's documented. You can see photos. You've got virtual tours online, which is not allowed to go in there because someone tried to explode the place last time. Right? So if Herod spent that type of amount of manpower quarrying to set up a platform, why would he leave the peak of the mountain sticking out? Why would he leave the peak of the mountain still sticking out if he wanted one giant thicker platform? So listen, we don't have enough jackhammers anymore. So he literally cut sections of the mountain away to give himself a big enough platform.
Nee, een torenloo dat zit hier door de opbranders in Einstein.
Well, look, by the time we get to Herod, and then there's certain things that in Torah that were kind of, he wanted to keep them happy, but I mean, the wall of partitions and things like that were added. The different court systems that they had in that time were added. So when you've got to understand, there's a little bit of wiggle room that he's got. As long as I keep you guys happy. Point is, traditionally, they believe that that rock that's sticking out was the place of Isaac's binding and almost sacrifice. It still sits there today.
How fascinating that if modern day organized not going to flow, if they are the descendants of Ishmael, something else, how could you see that even going like park himself over the dinosaur?
They have reverence for Abraham and well, you know, it's Abraham, and if Abraham was here, it's important to us, and that becomes part of the play. But that wasn't their decision. Ultimately, it was Herod. Herod was the one who came over there and he said, I'm going to build this massive platform. I'm going to cut away chunks of the mountain. I'm going to make this massive platform so that then we can build the temple. And he leaves that section of the mountain to remember this moment. Traditionally, they understand that that was that top of that mountain where Abraham came and he set up that altar. And he said, on this rock, right here, right now, this mountain right, becomes that prophetic shadow. Right? So you remember, Yeshua was walking around those platforms and those colonnades. He was there. Could you imagine what he must have been thinking? Some people believe that they built the altar itself over the rock. So that the Israelite. So Herod built an altar to slaughter the animals over that section so that they would have the temple over on one side. This is not to scale, guys. It's like so that when you came in and you had that altar, you will remember that place of offering was the place of offering. When you say, I'm going to bring my burnt offering, which represents what, by the way? Burnt offering. Burnt. Didn't do it. Burnt offering. What is a burnt offering then? What does that mean to you? Every offering means relationship. Isn't it nice? Yeah, what does it represent? What's a heart condition? No. Atonement offering is an atonement offering. A sin offering is a sin offering. A guilt and trespass offering is a guilt and trespass offering. No, that's because we haven't done Leviticus yet. I'm going to drill this into your head. Remember, offering is worship. Heart condition is above all else. If I bring a sin offering, that because I realize that my sin is separating me from my relationship with God, my heart condition of a sin offering is get rid of the block. The guilt and trespass is something separating me. Get rid of the block. Peace offering, we're good. Let's sit down and have a meal. Burnt offering. I give a mincha or I give first fruits.
It's done.
No. Complete surrender. complete dedication. It's not just times, but everything I am is yours. Right? So it's less about me denying myself and more about me. I'm giving everything. Here I am. So when I get to the place of burnt offering, when Yeshua comes up, and the Passover offering is more about really when you look and you break it down in it from a Exodus point of view. A Passover offering is probably more of a shalmim, a peace offering. But there is a part of the peace offering that you take and you put it on the altar and that gets burnt up completely. A part goes to the priest and he eats, and a part goes to the person who offers it, right? So there's still a section that has to be burnt up to God. So when Yeshua is dying on the cross, what did he say? All things. He says, that's it. I've given every last thing I can possibly. I'm completely submitted, completely surrendered, and completely tapped up. Everything for you.
And completely victorious.
Oh, that becomes Father's job in the sense of when he's going, well, I'm going to use this one. Right? That 3-day resurrection and it's conquering death, because the crucifixion, again, and I have to stop myself when doing this chapter. Because I could literally take this and I could start to unpack the crucifixion in different ways for different meanings. Give you one example. You sit and we see that the fulfillment of Passover was at the cross. Right? So what does that mean to you? Give me the story of Passover in one sentence, thinking of the cross.
The blood.
That's what?
Kindness.
Not redemption. No. If I paint the blood on the door, what am I saying? I've been redeemed?
Protection.
Yeah, death will not enter, I'm safe.
Yeah.
So it's a protection thing, right? Yes, there is an application of that where God said, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. But it was the blood that covered first. First, it had to protect me and my household. Death will not enter anymore. So when I start thinking about the Passover and I'm thinking, I am protected from death by the blood of Christ. True, right? Then we start to think about it from a sin offering point of view. It's my atonement offering. I look at that same cross and I see something completely different. Every time I sin, every time I got it wrong, the wages of sin is death. I have to pay. I've separated myself from God, and there's no way back. I can't get to Him because of myself. How do I get to Him? Survive. Well, I'm here, I'm banging at the door, but I still sin and I'm still separate. Unless Father deals with the sin, deals with sin and death, deals with hurt and brokenness, deals with fullness and all of this complete cycle of things, I can never be reconciled back to God because of what I've done. So now when He does that, through that cross, there is a reconciliation through getting rid of sin. You understand? It's the same picture. Why do we have this portion to set up the cross so that we can better understand the aspects of Father's love? There's probably like 4 or 5 of these things that we can go down. I want to go down them. I just don't know if we should do it with the Gospels or we should do it now. Do it next week. I don't know. Do it with Father's things. But when we get to the place and when we understand, when I look at this atonement, this one piece of a prophetic foreshadow that gives us the illusion of just one. Are you completely surrendered? Just as Yeshua, are you going to sell everything, give it away, just to get that precious blood? Nothing else matters to me. I mean, this little thing, this moment, this truth, that gift. Father, what would we give just to know that truth that transformed your life forever? Because underlying all of the miraculous moments that got you to believe that God was real, the ultimate flip side of that was God gives his most precious son to die for you just so that he could have you. So if we had to flip that the other way around, it's God selling everything he could possibly have so you could be, he could come and buy you that precious.
And also, he died so that he could have me. So it's exactly amazing. So that these purposes, me can be hope for the same. In this battle.
Part of the process is, yes, I'm going to use you to tell others about it, but ultimately the intention is to get you home and safe. So I hear what you're saying is he's going to,
Me, but it's not about me, it's about this purpose. Us,
looking at it from, if I'm sitting there and I hear exactly what you're saying. If I'm sitting there focusing on Father, oh, you had to do this because I'm amazing, you're completely confused. Right. But the fact that Father thinks you're completely amazing and he says, I'm going to do that anyway, doesn't make that truth any less.
But my point is, it's not about that, it's about what he has purpose. So that can be.
But part of the purpose is already planning to get you home, you just have to listen.
Yeah.
His love for you supersedes your sin, supersedes your brokenness, supersedes your rebelliousness, supersedes, shall we say, cluelessness? I don't know. Well, we can add a few of those little is's to where we were. But if we can get to that point, that we have to understand that for us to enter into the kingdom, to have that faith, that trust, to give up everything so that we can have him, it's almost that flip scenario of how much did he sacrifice so that he can have. Now, that's not to give you a big head, that's just to show you the Father's love. For God so loved the world that he gave. What would he give to have you? There's some believers out there that look at themselves and they think they are God's gift to everyone. Wrong thinking. And there are some people who run around there thinking that they're completely worthless no matter what God does. Have to get to the point of to be able to receive the love of the Father as he said you're worth it. Not you, not anybody else. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. But ultimately to get you to the point where you could just look up and receive that and see the love through his eyes, and it doesn't matter what anybody else says. But he would just give you that moment. We go, it's my child. To see what I had to do to get you here. Just can't wait to have you in my house. All right, back to the parallels. Burnt offering. Verse. Complete dedication. 100%. All in. I don't know where I am anymore. Verse 3. Before we go again.
That's really right.
The parallel stuff. Abraham got up early in the morning, settled his donkey, 2 young men with him, and Isaac his son. He cut the wood for the burnt offering, departed and went toward the place that God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place in the distance. Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, I and the boy will go there, worship and return to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on Yitzchak's back. So Isaac carries the wood. What did Yeshua carry? What's it across? Let's just be a little technical. It wasn't a branch of a tree. It would be. Okay, which part of it? And that's okay. It was part of Roman crucifixion practice that they would give you your execution stake would be the short beam that you were able to carry. This was still fairly big. Remember, it has to be quite here. The one that would be part of the longer end of the cross, the vertical section, that was put into probably a pivot system so that they could attach you once they fastened you on, put you onto that, fold you up, and then set you there. That was like, this is the place of execution. So you would have to carry your crossbeam, your execution stake, take the thing that's ultimately going to kill you and go to that place. Now, where? That's just why we have this picture in our mind, because I think we can get this wrong as well. We can think of Mount Moriah and we can look at the crucifixion happening high up on a hill. Is that accurate? Historically, no. It was done just outside of the city gates, and the crossbeam would have you hanging probably about, your head would be about here. Okay, if you ever get, well, when we go to Israel,
Yes.
and I take you to
Amen.
and I take you to Nazareth village, right? They will have one that's set up at the right height. The point is, Rome wants to make the point. This is what happens when you come up against us. You die. You die slowly, you die painfully, and it's going to be a point. Outside of the city gate, to make sure everybody understands that when you come in here, who's in charge? And that if I wanted to, I could walk in, I could spit in your face, and I could carry on going. We need to get the idea that 3 crosses on a hill and everybody sitting at the bottom of the mountain, sort of an elevation of the thing seems to take away the humiliation of it, the degradation of charity. They can literally sit there and they're mocking him and they're joking. And the guy on the one side of him, he's also busy, oh, well, do this. And they're mocking him. And in the midst of it, Miriam and John and them are sitting there. Miriam's crying. It's something we don't fully understand. Thank God we probably don't, because you will rock yourself to sleep if you get the full picture. It's brutal.
It's what revealed to us from those not children. I mean, we see picture young person and we see Africa, the little boy, and all the picture go. And we see this huge cross and it's high and a mountain. And that's all the pictures that we do.
Well, again, if I didn't understand the historical aspects and we didn't understand the culture, we didn't understand the place, if I were left to that, that's exactly the scene I would have. He went on top of a mountain and he was crucified. What do you want from him? You know, how he sacrificed his son. Oh, okay. See, it's part of the process of that when we need to kind of deconstruct the historical aspect and the cultural aspect and go, okay, well, what do we actually understand about it? This is the blessing of being able to go to places like this. Yeah. Fairly close, probably within 200 meters. Right? If we understand, one of the places, it's a really good place for you to remember this reality is like place in Jerusalem called the Garden Tomb. Outside one of the biggest city gates, Damascus Gate. Hustle and bustle and crazy, and it's less than 200 meters away from where the actual cave was discovered, that they believe that he was probably laid. So the crucifixion would have happened probably just outside Damascus Gate. They probably would have buried him just on the outside.
You see if you take yourself back in that beginning, you see the temples on there.
Well, that becomes an interesting thing, isn't it? Some scholars believe that it was probably not outside Damascus Gate, but more on the Mount of Olives. You will see the temple from everywhere. Fine. It was a massive building, even bigger than the Dome on the Rock today. It's probably a third taller than what we see, and it dominates the skyline. But when we look at placement, when it says they looked in and they saw the veil torn, apparently there's only one place that they would have been able to see it, and that would be from the Mount of Olives. So it's up for discrepancy of the exact place of crucifixion, but when you go to near the Garden Tomb side, you get the place of the skull. It's literally a quarry that has the face of a skull, right? I've got a photo from early 1950s, somewhere there. I'll see if I can remember to bring next time. You can actually, like, looks like a quarry, and you can see two eyes in the mouth. Like right over there. Right, so it makes a lot of sense. Don't get caught up too much on destination, but focus on the intent of what's going on. Okay, we good? Okay, let's see if we can finish this parallel before next week. Isaac carries the wood, what else? He spoke to Abraham his father, no, fire and knife, stay with the donkey, I will go up. He took the wood, put it on Yitzhak, then he took in his hand fire and a knife, and they went on together. Isaac spoke to Abraham his father, my father, he answered, here I am, my son. When Yeshua was on the cross, did he talk to his father? Right? He didn't get the same response, right? He actually said, Father, why have you? He says, I see the fire and the wood, but here, where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham replied, he will provide himself a lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And they both went on together. They came to the place God had told him about, and Abraham built an altar there, set the wood in order, bound Yitzhak, his son, and laid him on the altar of the wood. On two sides of this, you could probably put down God or Abraham lays down his son. And on the other side, Isaac trusts his father and makes his own life out. And we see that holding up. Yeshua said, no one takes my life, but I lay it down. And yet we see him in the Garden of Gethsemane. Father, if there's any other way, let this cup pass. Both aspects come across, right? Where am I? Verse 9, no?
Well,
Yeah. Abraham and then they him away. Yeah, without the son. Yeah, but let's go to 13. Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram caught in the bushes by his horns. Okay? Right. So we have a crown of thorns. Okay?
and I just mentioned
Yep.
also in the Ray culture, your future is behind you, not in front.
Elaborate. Yeah, what he's saying, that which you cannot see.
Now, if your past in their culture, where's your past? It's in front of you. I can see everything that I've done. Where's your future? Behind you. So I can't see it. We the opposite way. So Abraham lifts his eyes, he looks behind him into the future, and he sees a ram with a crown of thorns.
Okay, so it's people.
Hebrew culture.
What's behind that which was unseen, being revealed. Okay? Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering in place of his son. He becomes a substitution for. So we can understand Yeshua. You can also mark down. He becomes a substitution for many. Abraham called the place Adonai Yireh. Okay, now Yireh. I'm going to do the share quickly. You guys can see. Yireh. Okay, he will provide. Mount Moriah later gets his name changed to what? We call it Jerusalem. Yerushalayim. Right? What did he provide on that mountain?
So
Shalom. put the two together, it actually means Jerusalem. Right? Okay. So when we look at the term Jerusalem, it actually comes from two Hebrew words, Yira, Yire, Shalom. Put them together, it becomes Se Yerushalayim. So when it says God will provide, what will He provide? Not only the ram, but through the ram He provides God, peace, Shalom, peace, peace. Right. No peace?
Like Jerusalem is one
Yeah, but I think that again, you're dealing with the fruit thereof. At least, listen to me. Shalom is not the absence of war in one sense. Okay? Shalom is understanding that God is in control. That everything is as it should be. So in the presence of a chaotic world, you can still have shalom. Doesn't mean that you're in war or that your situation is great. It just means that I understand that Father is still in control. Can you imagine Abraham's mind and Isaac's mind going on over here and going through this whole process, and eventually it goes, oh, no, I have peace about the whole situation. Yeah, more like, I was really hoping in the resurrection.
The Jaya translation. Yeah, will see to it. So the peace will come. So that's also when I pray to be. Okay. I understand that the peace will come. I'm waiting for the peace. This being to touch that. Peace of my peace. So there. It's like, oh, see it. Continuous tension.
It becomes part of the prophetic promise.
Yes, so it is.
Yes.
Serious.
Yeah, it's all the time the fullness of it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So yes,
Verse 14 in the Amplified
yes, please.
says, so Abram named that place, the Lord will provide, Jehovah Jireh. And he said to this day, on the mountain of the Lord it will be seen and provided.
Yeah.
Everything was translated.
No, it's not. It's the way the Hebrew works. It can mean to provide or it can mean to. But if you were a translator, you'd be having an absolute nightmare with all of these.
No, this was an American
Yeah.
Yes.
We love to say, you don't have to become a scholar, you have to. I've done all the work for you. Then the angel of Adonai called out to Abraham a second time out of heaven. He said, I've sworn by myself, said Adonai, that because you have done this, because you haven't withheld your son, your only son, I will most certainly bless you, and I will most certainly increase your descendants to as many as there are stars in the sky or grains in the sand of the seashore. Your descendants will possess the cities of their enemies, and by your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, because you obeyed my law. Because you did not withhold your beloved son, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. He says at that point, that promise that I gave you there points to Yeshua. And because of Yeshua, because he did not withhold his only son, that everyone will be blessed because of his death, burial, and resurrection. So, every single one of these things, and this is one of those things, it's like, you remember when Yeshua said, if they didn't believe Moses, they wouldn't believe me. Right? We have, in a very short amount of time, how many prophetic passages have we seen just in the book of Genesis alluding to those ones? We haven't even got to Joseph. Right? This is future event. Start asking the question, why would God include that? Why would God ask Abraham to do that? Why? Surely there could have been another text. if it wasn't to show us exactly the way the Messiah was going to be identified. So Avram returned to his young men. They got up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham settled in Beersheba. Afterwards, Avram was told, Milcah too was born, children to your brother Nahor. Okay, before I carry on. Is everybody okay with this? Yes. Yes, Shemay.
Judy, very, very
Yeah.
Jesus, you play the holiday. The disciples beyond. It's better than
Yeah, who was left behind?
Peter, John. But,
The single word that comes out of me, confidence. Also, come on. Right, go look at it. The biggest step in their parable, look at the identification of what was going on. Okay. What else?
The Isaac not coming down with Abraham, Yeshua also didn't come back. He stayed away for a while to be with his bride.
3 days later. Yeah, 3 days later, if we were to chase that parable, so we got a 3 day. So, well, let's go. Isaac. You're going to say hangs around. Isaac hangs around. And then we fast forward a little bit into the chapter. That's where you're going, right? Okay, I want you to, from where we are, Nahor, verse 21, listen to for the name of the bride of Isaac. Uz his firstborn, Uz his brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Kesed, Atzor, Pildash, Yidlav, and Betuel. Betuel fathered Rivka. These were 8. Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother, his concubine, whose name was Reumah, bore also, all children also, Teba, Gacham, Tachash, and Ma'ach. This Rivka, Rebecca, is the same one that later gets given, is the bride to it. It's distant relatives. So the bride gets identified at the time of the cross. Does that make sense? Okay, so we have that continual 3 day picture, Beersheba. What does that mean again? The well of the oaths. Right, the well of 7, it had to do with covenant pictures. Right, and that would lead us through to that the bride's gonna be identified. Right? Yeah.
We go back to, 2018, and Mars is not seeing. It's seeing some loss. But even though you're seeing the, I think you'll see it shall be, I think you'll see it shall be made. Because we have a way of words. I read that, verse 15, which is and Simon says, and underline the light in the end. People convey is during the sacrifice. Here. So yes, it is sacrifice. Yeah, that's that can be one thing. What this, what I like about this section of the same chapter, which is fun. It's even end of single piece, and here. Yes. And I am an actual learner. I'm not a and worship. Again, to you. That word worship, we were in the Genesis 18, where it now, this is something the word worship. And here in the same chapter, we it's a big expression that we can watch and this is about much, so Abraham obedience, the stuff to this righteousness, and how that ties into that opposition much.
Yeah. So what's up in your seed? Okay, I want you to tie this back to me in the garden,
So what?
to the garden. Garden Day. Garden of Eden, you and your seed. Help me understand. The end is revealed in the beginning, doesn't the prophet say that?
Yes.
No, they both talk about the Garden of Eden, don't they?
So
They both talk about the Garden of Eden, don't they? So help me understand, for you and your seed being an illusion to something in the garden.
yes.
No, not Genesis 15, specifically the Garden of Eden. Remember, I told you when we're starting the study of Genesis, you're looking at the tale of two trees:
Yeah.
tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You will identify it by its fruit.
Yeah.
In Genesis, you learn about the law of like kind. Everything produced after its own kind. Why? Because it's after its own seed. So when Yeshua gives us you and your seed, what seed then would he be alluding to? If I believe in Yeshua, I'm going to have eternal. It's descendants and taking you back. With me? The descendant could mean through your physical seed, but also when we look at the spiritual aspect of it, when we're looking at the tale of two trees. Right? So Yeshua then becomes a picture of to you in your seed, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. He becomes a tree of life.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
When you go to love, you'll crucify on that tree.
Why do you think you have to get put back on the tree? The fruit gets reattached.
Wow.
Okay. Sorry, yes. So we have three people sitting in the garden, seven. Okay. All right. So it becomes an interesting parallel, but you're dealing with the garden truth, huh? Okay. How long have I been talking? Hour, 20 minutes. An hour and 20 minutes. Okay. Let's we're going to go into the next chapter. And I have to restrain myself for this. Well, I'll let you know if you go into the crucifixion parallels. Would you guys like to take something like that for a little bit?
Yes.
Sort of like while we're dealing with this fish in our mind? Okay, all right. It's going to be a bit jumpy around, but just bringing out certain different aspects of them so you guys can think about so long for the next week. How does the crucifixion apply to me through redemption, salvation, sin and atonement, same picture, reconciliation, and all of these different truths that say, okay, well, God makes me righteous, etc., etc. And I want you to look at the crucifixion through that aspect. Holiness. Yeah? And then we can kind of go, okay, well, what then am I going to glean from each thing that he brings across there to help me better understand it? And then I'm going to take you into something that's completely left field. Yes, I will keep quiet on that one. The first time you hear it, it's very interesting, and it has to do with the way he was crucified. Okay.
Challenging it.
Yes, ma'am. I like the conversations. Can we pray? What action?
No.
It's something that, to bring a future your friend. Pray. You have to sit there and catch you enjoy this entire teaching. So. Maybe you had now. Father, again, we just want to thank you for this time. Thank you for this family, Father. Thank you, Father, that as we sang it here this morning, Father, that when we sit at your table, Father, we are right where we belong. Just want to thank you for that blessing. Thank you that we sit here with you. We thank you for your food. And we've eaten, Father, and hopefully we'll be satisfied. Father, that we've been filled this morning, Father, so that we may go out, not only just with knowledge, Father, but in all of all the things that you've done and that you're going to do. We give you glory. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.